We are going to go and try and buy 3 apartments and a house tomorrow on auction, foreclosure. So this apartment here, this apartment there, this apartment there, and this house over there. So that is what I'm going to talk about in this video. I've illustrated them here. So we have apartment A1, A2, A3, and then we have the dead house. The reason why I call the house a dead house is because it's condemned, so you're not allowed to stay inside, you're not allowed to live inside the property, and that reflects a little bit on the price too. So I'll lead the attention to Carl Icahn and Warren Buffett. So they are very famous investors, gurus that came before us, and one of the things is that we can learn a lot from modeling or copying the smart people that came before us. So both Carl and Warren have very, very, very strict standards or rules. So before they make a decision or invest in something, then they have very, very high standards, very strict rules. So it's actually very few deals that go through for them. So, and both of them have been operating within very, very specific niches. And it's because of the very high standards that they have that they actually made them very wealthy. So it's the same thing when we want to go and prepare for an auction, we need to be sure that the houses and the apartments we're bidding on actually lives up to our standards and set some standards. So Warren said that he would look at 1,000 businesses, so 1,000 different businesses. And then of the 1,000, then there's maybe 50 that has potential. And of the 50, then he would maybe buy 1 or 2 or 3 of them, right? So that is how strict he is, right? So if we look at the gurus that are trying to make people invest in stocks and stuff, right? They don't look at 1,000 different stocks or 1,000 different businesses and then throw away 950. But if we want to learn from Warren, then that is actually the way to go. And then he would only invest in stuff that lives up to his standards. And it's the same thing for Carl Icahn. It's he's looking for these niche businesses that are outside. Both of them are, Warren says, he would never invest in airlines anymore. and Carl Icahn had some problems buying into an airline company too. So one of the things that Warren says is that he would never invest in something he doesn't understand. That's why he doesn't own tech companies. And then some people would say Pelle, yeah, but he has some stock in Apple. I had that at some point. The thing with Apple is that he doesn't see Apple as a tech company. So Apple for him is a brand, and he understands brand and the power of brand. And that's why he invested in Apple, not because of their tech. So Warren Buffett, he became very rich by buying companies, the so-called, he calls it cigar butts. So that means he was buying dying companies that still had 1 or 2 puffs of life left that could generate some cash. So it's a very, very specific niche area that he invested in. And then besides that, then later on he would buy up in companies until he could get the control, take over an entire company, and then delist it sometimes from the stock market and put it under his Berkshire Hathaway. But buying stocks, investing in stocks like most normal people was not the thing that made Warren the rich man that he is today. It's the same with Carl Icahn. So Carl Icahn, he specialized in buying underrated, undervalued companies where the stock price was lower than he thought it would be, and he was looking at what kind of CEO was there, and then by changing the CEO, changing the management of the company, then would there be a potential for the stock price to go up, and then he would go in, buy enough stuff so he could get a vote on the board, try to change the management and change the company that way. And that's how he made his money. So both of them had very, very high standards. And it's the same thing when we need to go and buy these houses, or at least bid on houses and apartments tomorrow, that we need to look at our standards. So like for our company, Siggy, we are in real estate, right? So Siggy actually means silence, like kill you, and or like shut the F up. So we always say that we would buy something if the price is right. And a few other things I'll go through in a moment. But price is actually more or less everything. So there was a house here in the city we live in, Rødby in Denmark, where even if you paid me and gave me like $10,000, I would not buy this property. Even if you paid me to take it over, right? Because the layout is wrong, the amount of money I would need to put inside was wrong. But for a lot of people, they would be like, ooh, it's very cheap, right? But that's why we have standards like Warren and Mr. Icahn. And we need to fall in love with numbers, because numbers don't lie. The numbers only lie if we try to manipulate them or like do something stupid with the numbers, right? So we have spreadsheets. We have different spreadsheets. So the first spreadsheets I always look at when I'm looking at the potential of property, or like if we're looking at investment into a company, is the return on asset. So not ROI, but ROA. So what is the return I can expect to have on this asset? Because that determines, I would like calculate the property value, right? So if I bought this, so these are like foreclosure houses. So if I bought one of these or one of these apartments, what is the value I could sell it on the free market tomorrow? What is the value if I do such and such that I could sell it for in 3 months, in 6 months, and in 12 months? Then I would look at the rental income. What is the rental income I could charge tomorrow, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months, depending on renovation? So that is the second thing, is like I've determined that if it's like this and this and this, then the value would be this and this and this, and then the rental income would be this and this and this if I do these things. So then I would look at, okay, so how much does it cost to get this kind of rental income? How much does it cost in renovation to get this kind of property value? So when I have that, then I would determine the cost. And then I think people often forget is that they forget that it takes time sometimes to do that. So what is the timeline, the time frame in order to go from where I am today to where I want to be with this specific property? And then we need to consider the constraints. So the constraints with like buying this on the foreclosure and stuff is like, how much money do we have? How much time do we have? Do we have enough knowledge, right? So what are we buying? Do we know anything about this kind of house? Do we know anything about apartments, about the problems with a house? Or like an auction, you kind of buy, you haven't seen everything, and if there's like any flaws, then it's like I'm going to cry to my mom and sold me a shitty house. Right? It's just on you. And then we need to consider like the risks, like are the market going to change? What are the risks associated with the house type or the apartment type we're buying? What about the location? Are there any risks with the location? Are there any risk with like trying to finance these kind of properties? So in this area where we're looking, the properties are actually a little bit too cheap, so the banks don't make a lot of money, so they are like a little bit when trying to finance it. So if we look at the return on investment or return on asset, then I would always compare like compared to other investments, right? So what other options do I have, right? So if I only have one option, then I have no options. If I have two options, then I have a dilemma. If I have three options, then I have a choice. So before I actually put the money into this, then I need to decide like what other things could I spend this money on, and what would the return investing in the other things be, and then compare it. So right now we have 163,000 Danish crowns in the bank. It's not our money, all of it. It's something we call OPM. So a lot of it is other people's money, where you like get other people to give you the money. This number needs to be divided by 7 to get it in USD. So it's around like 23,000 US dollars. Then we have 20,000 that a guy promised us that we could borrow, but we haven't borrowed it yet because it's not needed. So that's a little bit less than $3,000 extra. So our rules, our standards, besides what, like, I'm not going to go complete into details with this. We have an entire course on that, but the return on investment demand for us is that we would want our money back within 2 years. So it's something I learned when I was working for Nestlé a few years ago. So they said, Palle, you can only do this if we get the money back in 2 years. And I said, no, that is crazy. They said, you have to do it. And then I did it. So the thing is that when we have these rules, then there's only like a few properties or apartments or number of, like, the amount of money we can bid on an auction where the property actually fits. So the many properties are down here, and that means like the last 2 times I've only bid 2 times on auction. We have 16 properties, but the last 2 times I didn't get the properties. The same thing when we were like buying houses. I would go out, I would look at the numbers, I would do my stuff over here, and then I would make a bid where the bid makes sense and it follows the standards we have. If it doesn't follow the standards we have, then I say no bid. And then sometimes they accept, sometimes they don't accept. And if we compare me to you, right? So this is me, this is you, right? So if you have no standards, then you would just go take the first and the best house. It's like if you have no standards with your female friend or male friend or anything, right, then you would just go get it, right? So the standard is that, like, I would not take this house. Maybe it's like this house can be like, do I have the skills? Do I have the experience? Do I have the knowledge in order to get this, right? So one house that's good for me is not good for you, and a house for you is not good for me, right? You just need to remember that if you think all the girls are pretty at the bar, or you think like all the houses are just amazing, that's when you need to stop and be a little bit afraid instead of it, because that means like you are on your way to doing something stupid. It's the same thing with the thing I was talking about with the Warren Buffett things, with the thing, right? So if you're looking at stocks and like 9 out of 10 stocks look good to you, you're like, whoa, this stock is amazing, right? Time to stop, right? Stop it. Get some help, right? That's not smart. A smart thing is to subscribe to the YouTube channel and maybe buy our course. Anyway, so the apartments we're going to bid on tomorrow. So we made an estimated value in like Danish crowns. So it's a little less than $40,000 on all 3 apartments, even though the third one is a little smaller. And that's like the estimated price when we're looking at the spreadsheet that we could go out when we've bought it, if we buy it, and then we can just sell it on Facebook in the next 2 weeks. So that is the price. We know that we can sell it for $250,000. Then, like when we're looking at the time spent on the stuff, right? Then it's like, okay, we don't have $250,000. So like we could bid that amount, but we don't have the money. So that means like it doesn't really matter how much we bid on these apartments, as long as it's within the budget I was talking about. Then if we get it, then it's above our line, above our floor, so it would fit, right? So if we stick within the money we have and we get one of these apartments, then it would fit our standards. So like I just joked that I made a video recently with like Mr. Tony Robbins has this Master University package for like $105,000. So why not just try to bid that on the properties as a little bit of a joke, because you always need a little bit of extra buffer. So that means like even though you have maybe like this amount of money in your bank account, that doesn't mean you should spend all of it. You always need to have a little bit of buffer for like unforeseen stuff, right? So that's why like I don't want to bid the entire amount unless we can get all 4 properties. Then I would do that. So with every apartment, there's like a cost associated with bidding on the property. So that means like if I make a bid and it's 1 Danish crown, then I would have to pay 37,000 Danish crowns in addition to that. Then on top of that, I would take over the deposit of the tenant that's living there. So that is like a debt you take over, because then when you become the landlord, then all of a sudden you owe the the tenant the money because the old landlord didn't that rented it out didn't pay them. So the rent per month is 5,500 Danish crowns, and then you have like an idea that the deposit might be around 16,500. So if we bid 1 crown on this property in Denmark, then we're actually paying 1 crown plus the 37,000 plus we take over the debt. So that means like 1 crown actually means 40, 50, 53. So that means like with the deposit, we actually we're taking over debt, like it's 53,000. So even though we're only bidding 1 crown, then the price is 53,000. So if we look at the 53,000 and we say, okay, so we would make a 70,000 crown bid. So it goes up in increments of 10,000 every time you bid on a property here. So that means like the first one is like 1 crown, 10,001, 20,001, so on and so forth. So that means like if we would go up to 70,000, that means we would take over the property for 107,000. So we have the 37,000 plus the 70,000. And then there's of course the deposit, but we don't have to pay the deposit unless the tenant moves. So that would be like the price we would bid on this, and then we still have like a economic buffer with this thing. So we were thinking that these are like a little bit old, and then if you could get the tenant out, and then you could spend the last 60,000 we have left, so that's around $8,000. So we could spend that on like a new bathroom, a new kitchen, right? Then we could raise the rent a little bit, and then that would make it awesome. Or you could sell it for potentially like 500,000 instead in that market. So with the second apartment, it's sort of the same, right? But here the amount of money you need to pay besides what you bid is a little bit different, right? So you need to pay attention to like all the details when you're buying on auction, right? Because there can be a little bit difference. There's one that comes for auction in 2 weeks from now, and that one has the numbers 100,000, right? So because sometimes you can bid 1 crown and then it's like 43,000 or 37,000 or 35,000 or 32,000, but the one that is like in a few weeks, then if you bid 1 crown, then it's 100,000, right? So that can be like a huge difference. With the second apartment, it's the same thing here with the numbers. So the last like 16K in deposit, there's a rent of 5.5, and the bid would be the same. But this one, it would be, even though we bid the same, the price would be 113,000, where this one would be 107,000. With this one, it's the same. It's a little bit smaller apartment, so this one is worth a little bit less. But when we look at it, we don't know if it's rented out and what the rent is on this one. So that is like an unknown. But with the bid here, it would be 105,000. So looking at that is pretty awesome, right? So if no one else shows up at the auction, right, we could bid like 10,000. So that means, because this is the second auction, so it's already been an auction once, and on the first auction the bid was 1 crown. So that means like this is final, right? So if no one else shows up this day, right, we would bid like 10,000, and then we would pay 45, then we'll pay 53,000 and 37. So 47,000, and that's actually within our budget, and then we will be able to take all 3 apartments. It's highly unlikely, but sometimes you just get lucky. Then we have the fourth property, which is a house. So this one is a dead house. So the value, if I want to go and sell it on Facebook afterwards, is like 0 crowns. So I don't think I could go and make any money selling this. There are stupid people that, like I said, like that would just that would just go. Think all the girls are pretty, right? And all the houses are pretty, right? They do exist. So maybe you can actually be able to go on Facebook and sell it for 100,000 to some sad person. Anyways, the amount you take over plus the bid is 32,000 here. So that means like if you bid 1 crown, you need to take this. If no one bids, so that means like no one. This is the second auction, and on the first one the bid was 0 crowns. So that means like if no one bids 1 crown, then you would start bidding into this one, which is the the amount, then you would say, okay, I'll pay 1 crown of this one. Then that is where the story of like being able to buy a house on auction for 1 crown comes from. The thing with this one is that it has no rent and it's condemned, so you can't live inside or stay inside, right? Where if you take over like this one, then so this is on the 19th of March, that means like in 11 days, the tenant has to pay you 5,500 rent. With this one, in 11 days, the tenant has to pay you 5,500 rent. In 11 days, the tenant has to pay you, we don't know. But that means like you already have something that is cash flowing if you take over these two. Where this one over here, we need to take into consideration, take into our calculations that we need to fight to remove this condemnation, which might take like 6 months. And in those 6 months, we're not getting any rent. If that makes sense. Where with this one over here, we actually get rent. So see, if it takes us 6 months to remove this one, and if we bought this one instead, then this one would have accumulated like 33,000 rent. So here we would get 33,000 on our bank account. Here we would get 0 money on our bank account, and there's still cost associated with having this. But I'm a little bit pissed off, like Carl Icahn is sometimes. So I decided that like I can make the numbers work. If I make a bid of like maximum 40,000, so that means like bidding up, so we would pay 72,000. The thing is that I have the priorities, so my priority would always be like get these first, and of course the priority is not to pay the full price. It's just to set a stop, like a max price on it, because sometimes we get like too excited when we are there. That's why we need to set like a standard and say like this and no more, and then we stop there, right? Because else like sometimes we've had some guys, and that was like at an auction, another auction I was at, there was a house that was like maybe worth like $20,000, and then they ended up paying like $100,000 for the house, right? It was like completely madness, because they were like just bidding war, right? So don't get excited, trust the numbers, learn to love the numbers, learn to subscribe to the channel, learn to give the video